Well, good evening. It's August. It's time for the August Omaha Linux Users Group meeting. I'm Jon Larsen, the Systems Engineer here at AIM, here in the wonderful Exchange building. We're in the Combine room. It's our public event meeting here. Check. Okay. When it's red, it usually means it's muted. So, and the levels are coming through, so that's probably good. Okay. Don't have Mr. Thacker here to say, but next month the Omaha Mini Maker Fair is coming up. So there is a website for that. If you search for it, you should be able to find it. I'm trying to remember if they're still looking for presenters or not. I'm sure that they wouldn't mind taking somebody if you would like to present. There was an issue with the OLUG website where the MySQL service stopped. You just need to be restarted so the website is back up. I did all the wonderful latest WordPress updates this morning. I don't know if anybody runs a WordPress site, but 3 cross-site scripting vulnerabilities and a SQL injection problem. So that's 2 weeks ago. There was another security update. So very similar situation. Tonight, I've been kind of putting this presentation off. Peter's been wanting me to do this for a long time. He wanted me to do this at Infotech. But I've actually done a lot more installations at this point, so it's a bit more comfortable with me. I've heard people say that they've had nothing but problems trying to install it, but I think it works out pretty good. So has anybody here ever heard of Xymon before? Your brother? Yes. How did? You've heard of it too. So that's kind of the lineage of this system. It is essentially a free systems, network, processes, and environmental monitoring. I actually do some environmental monitoring. It is extensible with scripts. You can download them off of many different sites, or you can write your own. It's pretty open. It uses a centralized server for receiving information from the clients, or you can set up a wholly localized installation. You're just monitoring one machine. You could do that yourself. A client can report to multiple servers. So if you're doing some system-wide things where you want critical systems to report to a centralized one, you can. And as I said, there's our lineage: Big Brother, Hobbit, and Xymon. Big Brother goes back a long, long ways. I first started using it in 2002 or 2003, way back, a long time ago, at a previous job. But Hader used it. He showed me how to set it up. This is so much simpler than the Big Brother setup. I mean, it's so much easier to do. Here's some examples of the items that come built in, essentially. You know, HTTP, SMTP, SSH, monitor disk and files, logs, processes, ports, memory and swap, and CPU. That's just for starters. It does use a web interface for monitoring, but for the most part, configuring is a command line operation. There is a GUI tool available for the Windows client. It's pretty basic. You configure the items and it writes out a file. The old PBNet can still talk to Xymon if you want to use the old system, but might as well just keep using the new one. It's available. It does notifications by email and SMS if you're using a pager gateway. for the most part, you probably use the email format of your text messaging system and hope that the emails aren't longer than the text message, because you will get, it'll split the message apart, right? So if you send a 50-line text message, it's going to split that all up and look like crap. I've never really used SMS notifications. I've only used email, which I'll cover a little bit because there's some interesting things related to that. It does have RRD tools built in. So, but the older version for Big Brother, you had to add all that stuff in. Figure it. At least with Xymon, it's all done. You don't have to keep remembering all the items that would create your graphs and all that stuff. There is reports, like you can generate your own uptime reports based upon what the client's reporting. You can acknowledge alerts. This is some things that happens when you're in a IT environment with many people. Who's responsible for the alerts, right? Sometimes the alerts may go on for an hour, at which point you may just get fed up and just shut it off. You can disable tests for maintenance or for planned downtime. I've done disabling the whole machines that I'm going to decommission. So I don't want notifications of a problem, but I may leave the machine running for a week or two before I fully decommission it. This is a sample of a live system I have set up. You notice it's green, which is good. It's very good. It does, doesn't it? Are you running Big Brother or Xymon or Hobbit something?
I ran Big Brother
For a long time.
after we just did 6, 7 years.
This is a screenshot because it says Sunday morning. You notice a few things here. Green diamonds versus a green happy face. The happy face means that something's changed in the last 24 hours. The diamonds mean there has been no change, essentially. So you can see CPU, memory have both fluctuated in the last 24 hours. I'm also doing some pings on people's VPN connections. So I can see that this person has left their VPN running all weekend. Or I should talk to him. It's up to him. He wants to run it that way. There's quite a few web servers, firewall, file server, database. So there's pretty much a couple ways to do this. Server compile is pretty straightforward. You just have to make sure you have all your development RPMs installed so that the things will compile. But more recently, I've been using RPMs from Terabithia. This is unofficial, but he's pretty much complete. He can take. He has things in his RPMs that are going to be fixed or are been fixed, but not in a release yet. So he's had some memory leak items fixed that aren't even in the general release. And he's usually, his last release was at the end of May. The last official release was like last year. So there's still items going up in this. Yes. Any questions? No. Eric, how's your leg? Okay. Don't pull that chair. So, I just happen to have this already downloaded. Where is it? Just this on the machine that I haven't updated in a while. It actually seems pretty good. It's better than work. Looks like it's asking for a bunch of SE Linux stuff. So I'm doing the local install with Yum because it's going to install all of my dependent packages. Because I'm not adding Terabithia as a repo, I'm just downloading the package and installing it. Can you all read that okay? Charles? You're one of the farthest people back there. I like that green screen look, you know, very 80s. On my desktop at work, I use amber. Those are the two colors I used back in the day. I generally prefer the amber for longer periods. I used to run a bullet board on the amber. I used to let it run at night. Amber glow, all very nice. Yeah, you'd see it drawing across the screen. It was so slowly. Kind of like here, we're waiting for this package. All right, so for the most part, you've got a few files that you have to modify right away. You've got your hosts, which is essentially all the systems you want it to monitor. Right? You've got analysis, which is those processes you want to know about. You know, what am I going to flag? And alerts, which is primarily who gets what. You'll see two entries here. Regular hosts and then stuff in the .d. I'm pretty much trying to put all of my stuff in the .d folders, because if I update the package again, it may overwrite the main one. But I'll show you that in a second. Boy, it's still going. It is a little Intel Atom system, the laptop hard drive. So it needs fping. That's what it does to check to see if the machine is alive. Versus regular ping. Fping is just like, hey, are you alive? Yes. Okay, got it. These are all the SE Linux stuff. I don't really use that. It's probably a bad thing if I say that.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Or what Al Pomerantz said.
Hmm?
Al Pomerantz, when he gave a talk on SE Linux, what he said. If you have a machine that you don't need SE Linux on, disable it.
Oh, that's true. I forgot that. See, that might have been the one where the audio failed. His mic failed halfway through the presentation. Kind of like your IP tables presentation. See me? You do a lot of this, and we don't know everything. Although we could close caption.
I already just overdone it. Maybe it was close to 59 normal.
The, like a Kung Fu film.
Yeah.
Well, this is a 250 gig, 5400 RPM laptop hard drive in this system. Doesn't need to do much. just needs to route packets, so it doesn't really write to it that often. You may have seen this system in my syslogging presentation, where I was logging everything to my SQL database. Still running pretty good. That Cisco ASA I was telling you about that had problems, that's dumped into a syslog database. And it's in debug mode, so the chat is like nothing. Yeah, it's yeah. Still got Cisco stuff. So we'll see.
That's not surprising.
Maybe I should have just installed this ahead of time.
Maybe the machine died, you don't know.
Well, it's possible.
Well, respond.
Oops. Dave.
Yes.
Omaha Mini Maker Fair is September 19th.
Saturday the 19th.
Saturday the 19th.
That is a Nebraska away game. So,
Oh, very clever.
yeah, it'll be at the Omaha Children's Museum.
Are you still accepting presentation?
Yeah, we still got spots left.
And where's the website again?
OmahaMakerFair.com.
Sorry, the
Click that big box that says Makers Apply here.
it's a Google Doc.
It is.
And this is at the Omaha Children's Museum. It's 10 to 5.
Yep.
Do you have any hints as what might be there so far?
So far, we have some local agriculture. We have some of our technology folks who were there last year will be back with some new goodies this year. There will be a demonstration of the Power Wheels Racing Series cars. Will be out in the parking lot.
Power Wheels Racing Series?
Yes, because we just got back. The Omaha Maker Group got back from Kansas City Maker Fair and took, I think it was second overall with their Minecraft entry. Team Steve.
Power Wheels Racing Series?
Yes.
They're just like seriously amped up, like.
Power Wheels Racing Series is where you take a child's car, you soup it up and race it like an adult.
They have plastic wheels, so it's just like a drift thing?
No, you can spend up to $500 on the car. It has to be powered. It has to be electric powered.
Okay.
You must have full safety equipment. You must have brakes.
Or just like when you grab it, that's it.
No, you gotta have wheels, right?
I like the logo there.
So pretty cool. No Fred Flintstone. No Fred Flintstones.
Just put like some like a roller skate bumper on your shoe.
So last year we raced we had a car that was themed after a kid.
Oh, from Knight Rider.
Yep. And this year we did a Minecraft car. So both of those will be out in the parking lot down at the museum. I will be doing a presentation on Raspberry Pi, unless somebody else volunteers, because I haven't seen one yet. And I will happily step aside if somebody has better mojo than I do on that. I will be doing a presentation on, I haven't decided how many things yet, but at least 5 cool things you can do with the free software.
Cool. I'm trying to talk about something about free software right now.
That's right.
Change.
Verifying.
Maybe I should have just opened my mouth. Complete. So, all right. So we were talking about these config files, right? So I pretty much use everything in the etc folder, the .d folder, which means the host config, which throws this in here automatically. I'm going to take this out. The BBD is the leftover from Big Brother. It's the Big Brother display. This is the main server.
Yep.
Right? So since I'm using the hosts D entries, I'm going to remove this. Add that in there. Oh, let's see. Add my desktop. Everybody's going to find out my internal network. You're going to hack me, right? Yeah, that'll make that problem. You can take all the movies off my computer. Okay, I'll throw a few machines in there for my hosts. Make a note and a file. Go to my analysis. It's nice because they include pretty much all the description of everything you can do in here. Okay, so in the analysis file, you're essentially going to make an entry for every host name that you need. This is a Linux specific one, so I'm doing a load. So this is yellow, this is red. So you got red, yellow, green. Those are your three states, big states. I'm also going to look for a process called SSHD. There should be at least one running. If it's not, it's going to be red. I'm also going to look for postfix. This is also a postfix. This is the queue manager. Cron. Syslog is running. I don't, so what if syslog breaks? I'm just going to throw a yellow if it doesn't. That's an issue. And it's going to look for Xymon. So this one is specifically for this server. There is some defaults that are built in. You notice it has 5 and 10, disk space is set at 90 and 95, inodes 70%, 90%, physical memory swap and actual memory. Those are the things that's going to go yellow and red on in that order. If I want to, I can actually just do that and have all of them reported the same. For the most part, my defaults are going to kind of take care of it. As an example, oops. These are some live ones that I have. So this is monitoring a database server. It's looking for MySQL. This one's running syslog ng. There's a separate disk that I want it to monitor for different percentages. This is red. That's really hard to see, but it's got a percent and a caret and an asterisk at the end. So this is a wild card. So any machine that has something web tests, it's going to apply all these rules to in it.
So if you needed to add more file systems, you just throw the map point in there, and then
Yeah.
the green and the red.
And you may want to do that, for instance, large terabyte file systems, if they're 95%, may have like 300, 500 gig available.
Right.
And you don't need it to be messing with it by sending pages. So you may do that file system and say 97% notifying. Now this is a root file system. This is a Windows one. So its load is 80% and 95% versus Linux 5 and 10. And I want to make sure that the BBWin process is running, although it's rather amusing. If BBWin isn't running, it's not going to tell you that it's not running. But if you had a different client that was sending information, you could still kind of monitor that. File servers, app server. Here's an example of it's looking for a specific program. This is something that we wrote. So we can look in that system for that. That's a Windows box. So for a firewall. Yeah. Why rewrite it when you can take stuff and work? Okay, so I'm going to look for cron. I know this system uses R syslog. SSH. I do not run LDirector on my system at home. That's how I don't need that. I don't need that. So alerts is who you're going to notify when there's a problem, right? So if this host has a problem, send it to this email address. This is the service and the duration, right? So I'm doing a 6-minute there, because there might be a little bit of a blip. This one repeats every 5 minutes if it's CPU, disk, or memory. Any regular process is every 3 minutes. And that's pretty much the standard we use is 3 and 5 for everything. I can actually notify 2 separate groups of people. So on this one, the BB Pages guy gets an email, and JD gets an email whenever that happens. So it's kind of, you can build in backup in case there's a problem.
Maybe I'm late or early. How does it actually give the events?
I haven't got to that yet. There you go. Yeah, there's a client portion that would do that. Apps doesn't really like you sending emails with certain formats. So I hardly ever use this account. So essentially, you have to analyze what you're getting, and you have to be able to send it notifications. So that was the Windows example. This is the alerts example. This one's a little bit longer. Here's a MySQL 10 minutes. A little bit of a long time, to say so for me. But this one's to DB pages. Maybe you have the DB people. And then the regular CPU disk memory. Oh, RAID. Yeah, you probably want that one tuned down to know what's going on. And I'll talk about that in my section later. But there are some built-in defaults, but you kind of have to work around with them. Okay, this is important for the server. You have to have the port 1984 open for the server to get information. This is a holdover from Big Brother, 1984, right? And you probably want to open port 80 or 443 so that you can connect to the server to see what's going on. And I included this firewall command for the more recent version of Fedora to add those items in. I'm using a CentOS system right now, so. It did install a file in Apache's config. Here it is. Turn off the syntax. So it's got both Apache 2.2 and 2.4 items. It's going to do the location. You may want to add password protection onto that. Yes, Robert?
You added the zone equal public to your firewall.
Yes.
Is there a way in the command line to find out what zone is currently active? I mean, there probably is. No.
You mean how it lists?
So nowadays in your firewalls, you often have different zones, public, where trusted, untrusted.
That's just the idea of zones in that respect is the program you're using, right? So for instance, I can issue all the IP tables commands I want and not worry about zones, so to speak. A lot of systems I've ripped out the new firewall command program, firewall stuff, and just use straight IP tables. But I've left it on my desktop at home trying to learn, get used to it, so I don't have to keep messing with it. All the CentOS 7 systems I ripped out of firewall D because the other system admins were getting very frustrated when they couldn't do certain things because they didn't understand.
Yeah,
It's hard enough to get them to understand that you type service space whatever space restart because the system control stuff was kind of.
You're configuring a server, and the first time you set up that network interface, you choose work. The next time, you maybe have to reconfigure it, and you don't remember what you chose before. You thought it was trusted. And
You've probably done more than me in that respect. The biggest thing is on my firewall, I've got an inside and an outside. And I block everything on the outside.
Yeah.
Inside, I really don't care. Unless I'm looking for something. So, please add any password protection onto your Xymon instance. Because you never know what people want to do. Since they can kind of get an entire view of your network layout with it, and all the IPs associated with it. We use LDAP authentication that is tuned down to a specific group. So only members of that group can log in and see information. So I can't just forward links to people that are working with it. I typically do not run Xymon on port 80 on the outside world. I use a separate port for that, so I don't have to waste an IP on it. You may want to do the same. Okay, so the client installation is how the information gets to the actual server. It is pretty, the old Big Brother days, you had to do so much setup with the client. It was a real pain in the ass. Excuse me, pain in the butt.
Everyone else got it there.
Oops, that's right. I can't use Xymon anymore on this system. It's the new DNF installer. And they've changed the format of it. How about that? There's essentially two things you need to change in the config for the client. The etc sysconfig folder, there's a Xymon-client file. You need to change the Xymon servers to put your server IP, and you may want to stick your host name in so that it matches your host config file. I've tried to let Xymon guess what the host names are, and sometimes they don't match, and then you're not seeing any data feeding into the system. This is just like the server. Well, I guess not. Oops. So here's our Xymon servers. 10, 1, and we'll call this guy Abby. That's pretty much client config. That's all we really have to do. There is something else, but I'll show you that later. We can actually go ahead and start that right now. And it is running. So, okay, time to start the server. Let's restart Apache. Hopefully it didn't choke on it. All right. So it's doing something. It's running. Putting stuff in varlib Xymon. There's a log. Client logs, senders. If we check netstat, 1984, right in the middle. But did I open my firewall for that? I didn't follow my own presentation yet. Well, internally I don't really care. Because it's only presentation. Oh, okay. So it's actually reporting data. I've got two reds. It doesn't like that it doesn't see a web server on the firewall, nor on my myth box. We can actually look at the test. Connection refused. Well, it's not really listening on the right port. In the host config, I'm just telling it to hit localhost, which I'm not listening on port 80. I'm listening on 8082. There. So I'm tuning my config to work with those services. And I don't remember what my myth class is. Although it said 80, that's my DB6. Well, for the most part, I kind of use that as an example, right? So this is the server. It's actually gathering local information from my system. It's throwing some things up here from DHCP. It shows that I went into root. Let's see. Here's my disk space. And there's the graph for the disk. Here's the CPU. Up for 191 days, the clock is 0 seconds off. You will see this on every system under Xymon. Since this is the server, it shouldn't be off from itself. But if the client differs in time than the server, it will note that in the settings. But I use NTP for all my systems anyway, so. Here's your memory usage, and the process is running on that system. This is just under the CPU tab.
Does this store all these events in a database?
Its own databases. Yeah.
Is it like files
I think it's no, it's RRD type files.
Okay.
Yeah. I gotta ask, John. Do you have your own DNS and it just happens to have OLUG.OLUG.cogs on there?
This is a commodity. If your machine on the outside, when it gets handed a name, will usually have that as the domain. OM for Omaha.
So your default DNS domain name on your LAN is OLUG.OLUG.cogs.
Yeah, I just passed that forward, just for the search domain stuff. I'm not using their DNS servers, but when my firewall does a DHCP request, it hands that back portion of it. I just change it to FWO1 so it's easier to get my brain. You know? So it's probably trying like crazy to email me saying that those services are down. So what I can do is I can acknowledge those alerts. I can put a password in. It's asking me for a password. Here's why it's very important to go through your presentation before you do it. I didn't set a password either. You know what? That's the wrong IP for that box. For the most part, Big Brother will pick up these changes as it's running. I will jumpstart it from time to time just by running the restart myself. Give that a second. So yeah, if you configured everything, it should be green, unless you have a test that these are failing or a genuine issue being reported. So for the most part, I have a test that's failing. I didn't test that portion of it. But you know, not everything's perfect. It's just a matter of going through everything and making sure it comes up. So now this is no longer red, it's green. And it gives you all the information about that server that's allowed to give you information. Here's your event log report. So you can actually have it give you the reports. This goes back in time. You can see where the tests switch. If you click on this, you can actually get historical data that keeps tabs on all this. There's just the main view where you see everything. And this is the non-green view where it just shows you trouble spots. So for some reason this is yellow. Cannot access checkpoint. That's probably a permission issue. A lot of times this will go yellow if you're using Windows clients. Windows boxes spew a ton of data that's Xymon. It throws everything out of that log at it. It is just a pain. You actually have to modify the Xymon config to accept a larger message size from a Windows box. It's just so much data. Oops. So the colors, green, everything's all right? Yellow, it's a warning, you may want to take a look at it. Maybe you're running out of disk space on a system somewhere. Red is critical alert, you better pay attention to it. Now there are times where you can sort of get cry wolf because you may get so many pages. And that will usually happen with a newer Xymon installation as you're trying to tune. That's why you see some of these things that say 6 minutes or 10 minutes. Just because I don't need something that I don't need a page if I have a rate condition that only lasts 2 minutes. That's just going to wake me up in the middle of the night. Believe me, it does. So I try to tune some of that down. Purple. There is no report from that test. You should probably check out why. And this happens typically if you've rebooted a system and Xymon is not set to start automatically, and you come back the day later and it's like, what happened? Well, the client needs to be running this in a day. Blue shows up for disabled tests, and white is no data or clear, so to speak. There is a trick where you can label a host as dial-up. So for instance, those VPN systems, those are listed as dial-up. I don't need a page if there's no VPN connection for an individual client. I just want to know when they're on. So that provides me a log of when they're connecting and disconnecting the system, and I can run reports on it. The one time that you want to actually have the client do more is when you're doing specific scripts. Say you have a RAID controller in that system, and you want to monitor the disks on it. You can go and look for the script. You can install it in the Xymon client external command directory, and you have to, excuse me, you have to modify the client launch config. So in this example, this is a MySQL replication test. You have to run that locally on the system. So some of the items still say Hobbit configs in them. If you look at the main config file, you see Big Brother config, then Hobbit config, then Xymon config. They all kind of reference the same variables. So this is what gets passed to the client. This particular program is actually a Perl script, which goes through, connects as a user, runs the slave status command, and it parses it and sends it back to the system. And that runs every 2 minutes. So we use this a lot, best to make sure it works and test it, because you don't want to go into a situation where you thought everything was working fine and you forgot to put this test in on your production system, and 3 months later you discover that it wasn't working. Case in point, July 4th holiday. Discovered that I had a replication error. That began on March 5th. Luckily, all the data was queued up on the database server. But every day there was a script running out of cron that would cause the slave process to error out and fail. So I figured, oh, I'll just fix it. I'll just skip one, but then I'll be fine. And it just kept happening over and over again. And Big Brother was emailing me the entire time to say, hey, there's a problem with replication, since I fixed the test, right? So I disabled the test. I wrote a second program that would hit the database server and restart the slave process like every hour. And I blew through 3 months of data and replicated it in like 4 days. Better than sitting in like that, the bird in The Simpsons where Hugh sits in the Y button. So yeah, tests are great to make sure that you're doing your job, but if you forget, then you're kind of screwed in that respect. And that's why you have tests, to cover those situations. We have another one that's just simply called MySQL. It logs in and it says, show me the statistics, like what's the slowest query, what's your uptime, how many queries have you processed, things like that. Like if you restart the server and those counters go down, it will send a note out and say, hey, server's restarted. Because you've seen in the analysis where it looks for the MySQL process. But if you want to test that the server's running, you have to run a separate item. Because you can see all that stuff running all the world, but hey, whatever. I'm currently troubleshooting a web server problem where we have a search server that's indexing the web server. And every so often, the web server just stops working. Now, all the processes are in memory, but you can't connect to it. So, looking for a process that says, yes, I can see that there are 5 HTTPs running. without it connecting and testing that connection, this test means nothing. So it's kind of like two things you're going to cover for yourself. All right. If there's one thing I learned, try not to monitor servers over a VPN. You will get a metric load of email alerts and the VPN is down. Or the VPN comes back up and all the mail that was sitting behind that VPN decides to send out. We used to have one big brother for our entire company. We would monitor our colo facility, all this other stuff. Our cable modem would go down. I wouldn't know that we were down because it couldn't send any email out. The cable modem would come back up. And there were 4,000 emails queued. Because if it runs every 3 minutes, and it's checking 50 systems to see if it can get a connection, I get 50 emails every minute that says I can't connect to that system. Right. So my rule of thumb now is I use one server for each location or slot. I have one for the exchange code. I have one for our colo. There's a test at the colo that tries to connect to the cable modem, but that's just one test. It's not 50 tests that's going to fill out my mailbox.
Is there not the option of the dependencies where you can say if the VPN is down, don't email me about all the stuff on the other end? Is there dependencies?
The dial-up stuff works, but in that situation, it's kind of like I know the servers are up. I don't need this guy to tell me that they're down, which I figured the best way was to split them. Because the only option I had was to use a dial-up parameter, which is a false, false
alert, not an alert.
Yeah, and you can spread the timeout and say only send me an alert every 15 minutes.
You can't say like, don't check this host if the deal goes down.
Yeah, like conditions.
Oh.
If this VPN's down, we know we're not going to be able to talk to this.
I haven't done that much logic. I'm not sure there probably is. Like you'd have to do a route. So for instance, the one that's in this building, it pings. So we have like 2 internet providers. I ping over our CoxNet to CenturyLink. So if CenturyLink goes down, I know that Cox is up, but CenturyLink is down. If Cox goes down, I don't. Then my colo one will tell me that Cox is down. So I'm kind of passing the buck along to figure this out. I also have, like a long time ago, somebody wrote a Perl script. All it does is try to ping the exchange code or colo, and then it sends a text every 10 minutes. If our colo is down, I might not see those for 4 hours. So it's kind of the nice thing about sectioning them all off. And you don't need a lot of memory. You may only need like a 512 meg to run one of these things. In a small system. Make sure your email works. I'm not getting any pages, so I know my email's broken. But it's the only way you're going to know unless you physically log in and log. Train all the other people in your department how to disable tests before they start making changes. Nothing more annoying than to be working and then your pager starts going off and you don't know who in your department made changes, but you know it's you. We have a test called syscheck. And all it does, and this runs on the OLUG server too, all it does is it makes MD5s of the Etsy folder, everything in bin, user S bin. So if somebody does like an update and they install a new program, guess what happens? It notifies me that something on the system's changed. It's like tripwire, right? Yeah. But people always forget to reset it. And every 10 minutes, here comes the page. Even if you change someone's password, Etsy password's changed. Here comes the notification that something happened on the system.
Post file.
It's a great little tool, right? I think Robertson actually wrote it originally. Oh yeah, make sure your message log is readable by Xymon. A lot of times it's 600. Xymon can't see it, so it may throw a red to say, I can't read the log, or your log's empty. Right?
You also just see what user made the change and then send them an email telling them it's changed.
I wish. Because that's the first thing I do is I'll log in as look at the last log.
Right.
But on some of our stuff, we have a generic account that's used to run processes, so they log in as that one. So 5 people know that password. Keep the server by itself as its own VM if possible. Try not to mix it with other enterprise services. If swapping from another process or service takes down your Xymon server, you won't know. This has happened to me too. Makes for a quiet evening and a long next day. Yes. Oops. This one got cut off. Make sure you're using NTP on everything. Kind of like Windows domain. Have everything NTP. So that your history logs and all that match up. It's so much easier for you in the end. That's what I had 3 of those. Oh yeah. There's a section called Ghost Clients. If you don't get the client config name correctly, the client will still send data. You just won't see it on that big list. So they have a section now called Ghost Clients. So you can actually look at it and see what's sending data. Now I've made mistakes in the past. And I put the wrong IP in for something. And it sort of shows up as the wrong item because it's not expecting it from that system. Ugh. Add-on scripts may need changes to operate inside Xymon. Since the legacy of Big Brother and Hobbit, they don't necessarily know the variable names. The client launch config tries to push that stuff out, but you still may need to make changes to it to run inside of Xymon itself. Please, if you have a RAID, make sure the test you choose works, and we'll alert you. Mine kept reporting green after I lost 2 drives. Make sure it works. And it's very difficult to test that, right? Because you only know when it works when it fails, right? Oh. Add your environmental monitors to Xymon. Nice to have centralized notifications. So for instance, okay, this is a production one. You see I've got some blue. Those systems are destined to go away. I don't need them anymore. Down here are my environmental monitors. This is a Perl script that we found. I modified it a separate job. And I brought it over with me over here. But 72 and 65 in that server. And since we got graphing, right? That's the TCP time. Oops. Oh, I'm thinking of something else. I have it graphing in MRTG, not in here. I'm monitoring all my network switches. If the switch goes down, here's that CenturyLink one. These are actually outside. History. So here's the day, the week, 4 weeks. Oh, something there. Oops. Year. Here's the last few entries out of it. So yeah, it stores a lot. Here's our ghost clients. It's empty. I must have done something right. Event log report. Say the last week. Here's what's happened over the last week. Notice that the VMIO, virtual memory, is being swapped. That's a big database server. It does a lot of work. This is when my site-to-site VPN went down. I have 3 tunnels on this Cisco device, and one of them went down. It magically restarted itself. But yeah, it just keeps, that's the last week. There's a VPN connection going, turning off. Dial-up host. Otherwise, it would be red. Here's our alert acknowledgement. This is what this screen looks like. You can say, the next 10 minutes, the memory, I'm just going to say, pick up, and I'm going to acknowledge it. So in a few minutes, this will have a check in it to say that that alert has been acknowledged. And you can do multiples. So like if you do 5 minutes, and you check these 2 boxes, and you put in a reason in here, you press send, all those will be acknowledged. So essentially you're saying, don't page for the next 5 minutes. Typically, you may want to do an hour, something like that. We've done very long database loads that take 4 or 5 hours, so we may say, I don't care about this stuff for the next 5 or 6 hours. I know it's going to be busy. Keep it quiet. Here's the enable disable functions. You essentially have all your hosts over here. We'll use this printer for an example. I can say all tests. I can give a cause, testing. I can disable it for 4 hours. I can disable it until this date and time. Or I can say disable it until it's okay again. Say the guys come in to do maintenance on the printer. I'm going to say, stop the test until it's okay. When he's done. I can schedule. So if you have maintenance windows, you can schedule all your systems to be disabled at a specific time. Handy for planning. Here's the ones I currently have disabled. I could actually go through and re-enable them if I want. Here's my availability report. Let's do 1st to the 3rd. Oops, not that one. That's kind of cool. CSV. Gives you your percentage of only the items that were in that state, right? So this guy is 99.79, and here's the values for that period. It's just much quicker to show you on a system that's been running for months because it has a lot of data in it. There's my wireless access points, printers. These are all set for dial-up, by the way. I don't really care if the printer goes down. I don't need pages for that. Because people always walk up and go, oh, it's not printing. Who cares? And these are my off-site checks. So these are specific to servers at a colo or VPN. Since we've been having our VPN issues, these are the ones I do want to know about when it happens. See, this not says dial-up. So I can go in and restore the connection for that problem. And yes, it always happens in the middle of the night.
least opportune time for you. That's the best time for the telco to work on.
Do work. Okay, extras. Deadcat.net has been around for a long, long, long time. Originally, they were a Big Brother site. It's now hosted by Dell and actually looks like a real website. Yeah. Devmon will add SNMP testing to Xymon. This is the next thing I'm going to look at because I want to replace my separate MRTG, which is old and crusty. And I don't want to have to learn caching. I've been trying that for years and it's a pain in the butt. Have you done it? You want to do a presentation? No. Okay, fine. BBWin is the name of the Windows client. It pretty much uses the same config. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. And I'm trying to remember if this was the end of my presentation. Question? Yes?
So why do you say use Xymon as opposed to something else?
As opposed to Nagios?
Yes.
Yeah. It's because I've used Big Brother so much in the past. We've always wanted to go to Xymon, but we've always had some hurdles. And I took it upon myself as a challenge to go through those hurdles. Because even Adam tried to implement it. He was having all sorts of problems. Xymon? Yeah. But that was like an older version of it. So, I think he was doing some weird port stuff too, which might have been related. They did have it running finally on a few systems. But when we were trying to integrate it here, we had all sorts of weirdness stuff. I didn't. That sort of has been resolved, I guess.
Is it still in active development?
Yes. Most recent release was last year. You didn't hear earlier about did you hear me talking about the RPMs? Yes. Okay. So for those who didn't hear at that point, the T50 site has RPMs that get generated which has fixes that aren't necessarily in the actual release yet. Their website just kind of looks like this. And go back to the README. This is not an official repo for Xymon. Original sources are at xymon.sourceforge.net. Packages contain a fairly large number of alterations to the original release, some of which are or will soon be in the process of being incorporated upstream. Bug reports are appreciated. A more generic set of RPMs that tracks only the release tarball will be available soon. He's had that on there for a while. Last release 4.3.21-4, May 30th. So there's at least one point released during May. They're still being released out.
So back to my question. So what does the client, how does it just like every, at a timer pull the?
Yeah, it sends the data. Let me see if I can find an example. So like client log. This is like everything that gets sent is a packet to the server. And then the server just parses the whole thing, right? It looks for certain items in the package.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
So it's
like a big status message. Okay, here you go. Here you go. Yeah.
Unless you use external command. You use external command.
External commands have to send their own data to their own packets. Like those MySQL replication report stuff, I have to, the command itself sends that information.
Okay, so it just tells them what's going on and then it's parsed.
Yeah.
Like so often it just sends it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So, for like switches and other devices, you do SSL.
I believe you can do SSL. I've not done it. But yes, Ron?
So for switches and other devices, you can't install a client on.
You're just doing
use Devmon.
You're just doing basic use Devmon. Yeah. Which is what I want to do next. I haven't done that yet.
Devmon's SNMP.
Yes. I've used MRTG with the config walker, and it's a little archaic, you know, especially going in there and hand configuring your values for how fast the interface is supposed to take. It's just like the templates that you have to put in. I've got it installed. I've only had a little bit of time to play with it here in the office. At home, it works all right. I've got a few things in there. I have a Synology box at home, you know, 2-disc NAS. And there actually is a Xymon package for the Synology box that will pass the information. I have it, but I haven't tried to install it yet. Part of the reason why I'm doing the install at home is my VIF box ran out of disk space recently, and I didn't notice for 2 weeks. I lost 2 weeks of shows. Plus, my camera system is on the same drive. That's what filled it up. So it wasn't recording any security footage either in the house. So, best way to monitor it, just throw my own Xymon thing together at home, go from there.
But I have another question.
Yes.
Where I work, we have a really old brother.
Mm-hmm.
And how urgent would be to replace the clients?
You just pointed to this earlier. I've done that. I've used. We had some older SUSE systems.
Yes.
And they're still using the Big Brother client into Xymon. Yeah. So it should be. Well, let me let's see comparison.
Yeah, I know they work. I don't know what you're missing though. What's the picture that you're missing? Because it's already set up. You don't have to reset up the Big Brother.
Yeah.
So.
It's just. I think it's just easier to set up. I don't know if
But if it's already there, then I don't care.
Yeah. You could deploy the new one alongside the old one and have the clients point to both of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. At work, we had a really old brother, and people don't like it because it's really old and they want to do something newer. So
You throw this in there and you'd be like, this is the same thing.
that's what they asked me, like, 2 weeks old Nagios. I'm like, because they have a couple instances that each team install their own. So like, okay, so I want you to sit down and see if you want to roll Nagios or replace the value with Xymon or what we do.
It's habits.
So,
You use habits.
well, they gave me these two options because that's the two options they had already used them. So I can install a new Xymon and have all the times report to both. But then they don't want to have all these different monitoring systems. So you want to integrate everything.
Yeah.
So I used Nagios before. I never used Big Brother until the last 3 months. And I like the simplicity of Xymon. But Nagios have 2 billion tests for everything. That's not universally.
Never mind inflicting negatives on anybody.
I know, but it's already there. I'm not inflicting it. It's already there.
I had to work with Nagios for a class a year ago. And having used Xymon so much, everything seemed a little backwards to me. I mean, I kind of got it. But it was just like, okay, this is this.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Well, there's a pro version.
I had to monitor certain ports for students to know that they got their project done. So I got to do that while doing my own project. So it's like, all right, you do this and this. And they're like, John, can you help me with, hey, I've got enough of my hands played right now. I'm not supposed to help you with your homework.
Yeah, the configuration of Xymon is not just
And then
there's tools for Nagios that you can install that help you a little bit.
and there's a little bit of the web interface and stuff like that.
That's right. What is it? A Chaga. Okay, that's a little bit.
I don't know, I guess I've just been using it for so long.
Oh, okay.
It's a little easier to deal with.
There is,
The Xymon as well.
for Xymon, like if you get rid of a host,
Happy with that.
there's commands that you can run from the command line, let's say like Xymon.
Yeah,
drops, all that. I mean, that stuff's awesome. It wasn't really in Big Brother. Not easily.
No.
No, and it's, oops, the wrong test got reported for that. So, well, drop this test. I mean, it's weird, but it's in there. I mean, you can pretty much find it if you search for it.
And the problem we have with Big Brother is that they use the free version.
Yeah.
So this time we already had 5, I think.
Yeah, we were using
They can't upgrade it because.
Yep.
So I'm like, why are you guys using Xymon? And they didn't know that it's that.
And for the people who know how to use Big Brother, it's great.
Yeah.
You just say, by the way, you can do this,
On top of
this,
yeah.
on top of what you've already been doing. And they just sort of,
And it's drop-in, so I can install one there and have everything record both sides.
Yeah.
Until
to me, the whole acknowledgement system built into here made my life so much easier than it was in Big Brother. I mean, I was so much happier.
The pager rules
Well, Big Brother
are
doesn't
a lot
have-
easier to deal with than what I remember Big Brother.
Yes.
pager rules.
All that, the definitions for alerts.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Big Brother doesn't have enough alerts.
It was a little bit.
It was a very cryptic.
Arcane.
It was its own little programming language, I would say.
Here,
I didn't know.
let's look. You got one? I just shut it down. I found it was still running the other day. Okay, so let's see. I gotta think back.
Pager.
Warn rules.
Yes. Yep, there you go.
Read that one. All right, so this box, this test, this email addresses. Oh, and this one, I only wanted to go from 5 to 7 to the pagers overnight. I don't want to get emails. It gets emails and paging. And then it's like, oh, hey, do this one, and these are all your tests. And
Yeah.
the Xymon one looks a little bit easier to read.
I think I actually had Jay write me like a syntax checker to check all the semicolons.
Because this file, look at this. This is just
It was something else.
too many. Yeah, that was great.
And I get configuration files, I like that. They're horrible.
This is what I got put on another project. Woohoo! I didn't get any pages for that 6 months. Hasn't happened since, but whatever.
Also, for entertainment value and some thought about how messaging systems and warning systems look, go and do a Google search on a talk a guy gave early 2014 called "Just Don't Bleeping Use Nagios."
I saw it. Yeah.
You've seen that one?
Yeah. Because I'm doing research on all this stuff. So, yeah.
Which is,
It's good fun.
he's got some interesting ideas. I don't know if I didn't see that he's really following through.
He wants to use sensitive.
Yeah.
Oh, something I want to show you real quick. Just remember. Oops. You see this line at the top right here? Group accept these tests. Right? My screen is pretty big as it is. I don't necessarily need to see DVD, Xymon, Xymon Gen, Xymon Net, and NetStat. I'll still get notifications for those, but I don't have to see them in the big picture. And I can label it. Right?
Yeah.
So when you look at page, let's go back to our main view, right? That shows up right there. Since I have multiple Xymons, putting that title in is great. I mean, if I look at their systems, I kind of know. But it's just much easier for me to visualize that. And let me show you another trick. A lot of people have Gmail, right? Oops. Okay. This isn't normally in this command. Normally it's just mail, right? So it's Xymon at whatever host name entry is. I want it to be specific. I want it to be Xymon Omaha.org. And then after a while of having so many Xymon systems, Gmail doesn't care if you do the plus whatever, right? It's like, well, let's start that. So if I put in my from address which Xymon is emailing me, and I look in my list, the from address says what Xymon it is, before my even looking at which host it is. So I immediately kind of know, okay, it's down there, it's talking about this system. All right, the connection's probably down. And it's just how I'm thinking through my logic. So I've gone through and changed every one of these to, one at the colo, one here, one there. And I could filter on these too, right? In Gmail, do a filter, boom. Just one of those things, that you, I should have put that in my notes. But this is a fairly recent one that I did about 3 or 4 months ago. But yeah, you can see this file has a lot of stuff in it. All variables. This is one of the things you have to change for Windows, this max message stuff. I think I have it at the bottom. Yeah. 512. It's a big packet. It's all the crap coming from Windows. I had to make that bigger. It's hard to see, but yeah, 5242880. Normally, it's only default is so much, and the maximum longest length line 32. Okay, that had to be upped as well, because these event logs just. Here's all the commands that it references. It uses variables for everything. So in the extensible scripts, it'll always reference these rather than the actual command, because they're always different on one system to the other. DF on the old Big Brother was a pain. If you didn't do it, I'm trying to remember what this was on our system. We ran DF, we were doing filtering, and it wasn't calculating something correctly. And that might have been a riser system. So here's all the Big Brother variables. They're just pointing to the same Xymon. So this is how it does the compatibility with older scripts. It just reassigns the same variables to the older equivalents. And there's a lot of them. So yeah, you can have your own extra directory. Yeah. Here's where it's defining colors for fonts. Here's all the RRD stuff. We always had to modify these in Big Brother. This was a pain in the butt. But now it just sort of so much happier. But, I could keep going. And it's 8 o'clock. That's good time. So, thank you. Thank you very much. You're welcome. I've grown to love Xymon in the past year. anymore, it seems like the last thing that I set up on a slice of systems. But just knowing is great and all this stuff. Anyone will present next month? Anybody? Anybody? This is my first presentation this year. Can you believe it?
I can do October.
You can do October.
Yes.
Okay.
Next month I'll be a little busy.
I would imagine with the Omaha Mini Maker Fair. Tell everybody. Mini Maker Fair.
Omaha Mini Maker Fair, September 19th.
Husker away game.
What?
Husker away game.
Husker away game.
I see that tickets went on sale for Xymon's new arena for the hockey. Sold out in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
For the first 2 games. That's going to be something. The arena holds 7,500 people. I don't have to try to park at the really.
The thing is, you should be able to.
Thank you.